really special guest, and it's her birthday, by the way, so I'm greatly honored that she would come on today. It's Tabitha Hale. She blogs at pinkelephantpundit.com. I thought it'd be really great to have her on the show today to talk about her blog and how she's involved with Smart Girl Politics as well. Tabitha, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Tex.
So I saw you posted a blog the other night, and I'm sure a lot of people of our listeners have heard about this, that the porn industry now has asked for a bailout, along with many of the other industries. What do you think about that? I know you had some thoughts on that.
I had a really hard time with it, honestly, because I really wanted to make it funnier than it was, and I'm just not that funny. Like, I read the CNN article about it and just was like, I really can't come up with anything better than this. This is funny enough on its own.
Yeah, I laughed too when I read the CNN article because it said, Jerry Flint said, well, if you're going to bail out the banks and you're going to bail out the automakers, well, you should bail out us because people might not be able to buy cars, but they always should be able to have sex. Like, he said, like, that's what the quote was. I loved how it's a joint petition with the Girls Gone Wild founder who gets in so much trouble. I'm sure he probably needs a bailout just to pay off his legal fees. We're approaching a time in American politics where we could actually have a very significant shift in the political spectrum here. And I was reading earlier this morning, actually, FDR's speech to the Commonwealth Club. And he was very good at taking very complex economic issues and kind of bringing them down to simple terms and trying to explain them. And, like, for example, he would just say that government is a privilege and come up with this pursuit of happiness, which involves you having the right to life, involves you having a right to a decent living. And I was listening to Obama's speech earlier, and I felt, God, this is kind of mirroring in certain ways, especially when there was a talk about the common good. And I don't know, have you taken a look at some of the things? I know the devil's in the details. We really don't know where all the money's going to go yet, and we really don't know who's going to get what, so there's still so much to talk about. But what do you think about the Obama's plan so far?
I think that the tax cuts are a really pretty way for him to sneak in all the stuff he's got coming up. I mean, the money has to come from somewhere, and it's going to come from taxes. I mean, that's the only way the government gets their income. So he's going to make the people that are so opposed to him and know that he's going to raise taxes, he'll start us off easy. And I just see it going into, okay, he's got all these stimulus packages and everything else coming up that he's going to want to push through. And he knows that he can't start off right off the bat with tax raises and expect that to go over. So I think he's got to give a little bit here and there, but I think it's going to be a small give on the front end and a lot of take on the back end. Wouldn't
you think, though, the point of the tax relief is not necessarily just a political cop-out to try to get right-wing allies in the Senate and in the House? It's also, I mean, he promised middle-class tax relief, broad middle-class tax relief, and isn't that sort of a key point of stimulating the economy by stimulating consumers?
James, what middle class, though? We don't know what the middle class is to Obama after all this time.
Well, the middle class,
I mean, he's clearly defined it as people that make,
Yeah, well, it changes every time he defines it. I mean, he hasn't been able to come up with a definition of who middle class is, because you ask 90% of America, they're going to say that they're middle class. But the way he's helping the middle class is by the people that truly are stimulating the economy the economy are the people with money. They're the people, the businesses, and people that are, in that higher tax bracket. And the more you take away from them, the less they're going to give. And that's going to hurt the lower economy more than, raising their taxes. Well, so there's...
With the modern economy being based on demand, you have demand of consumption, demand in investment, demand in government, and in exports. And the problem is, I guess some would say that if you're giving tax cuts, a lot of people are not going to put this money back in the economy, as we saw with the handouts last fall.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, especially with times where they are right now, any extra money that people have, they're going to sock away. Right. They're not going to put it back into the economy because people are scared, because all we're hearing is gloom and doom talk about how horrible things are and how it's going to get worse and how the bottom's going to drop out. And if you give people $1,000, $1,500 at this point, they're not going to go spend it. They're not going to invest it. They're going to keep it out of the banks that are collapsing. They're going to keep it out of the economy so they can hang on to it.
Right. I really see, like, one of the things I'm really worried about is two things with Obama's plan. First is that the tax cuts are focused on people who I would love to see tax cuts focused on, those earning under the earned income tax credit. He's trying to cut people who are working their taxes even more, which I really support. But, the concern is, will they consume? The second aspect of his plan that I don't like is, as much as you can say 40% of the stimulus package is now based on tax cuts, well, the other 60% is based on really, we don't know where. We suppose most of it will be infrastructure spending overseen by the government. But it worries me with infrastructure spending and government spending. Government spending takes the longest time to have an effect economically. It can boost, but it takes the longest time. Plus, when you're spending on infrastructure, usually infrastructures are your key projects that will lag behind and that will also never fit on budget deadline. James knows this with the big dig.
My grandchildren will be paying off the big dig, and that's sort of the big problem with the infrastructure plan, is that, and I think all three of us are probably going to agree on this, that when the state governors get their hands on it, it's going to be basically viewed as a pork barrel, quick make jobs program. They might not necessarily make the proper investments. That said, you can't deny that. Minneapolis bridge collapsing. We have FEMA we failed in Katrina. We have all these other issues. The federal government could be doing a much better job domestically to build up infrastructure, and I'd say that's spending we have to make now.
But then there's the problem, James, that it makes little sense for the federal government to spend more if the states are forced to spend less. And I think you'd have better infrastructure in the states. They actually held to being able to fix their own projects a lot of times.
Right.
Be more on the local level. I think that would be best.
Now, is the right going to blame Obama for the deficits? That's the real question. Since a lot of these.
What do you think, Tabitha?
I know you guys are doing such a good job. No, I think Bush definitely got us into a lot of this hole. Obama hasn't had the chance to spend any money yet. It's a matter of shooting down the stuff that we think is going to make this problem even worse, and coming up with better solutions than spending more money and pulling more money from taxpayers, because there are better solutions, and that's government cuts. The smaller we make it, the better it's going to work, and the more we expand, the more the government gets involved, the more it's going to require from them, and they're just going to keep taking that from us and spreading it around.
Right.
So.
I think right now that private investments right now by the government might have the best direct impact on the economy, because if you get the companies starting to invest more, and if you get them having investment incentive tax cuts, like the tax cuts that are going to the companies, you didn't have to make a program that would make them want to put that money directly back in their investments and their research and development. And if we do that, then that's going to increase consumption. Otherwise, if we just do reckless government spending, we've done this before. We've gone down the road of Keynesian economics before, and it turned out having insane amounts of inflation in the 70s as a result. Because it's the problem with excessive government spending, and Keynes even recognized this, is that you got to stop. And it's government. Come on, they fuel themselves with the green dough. They won't stop. They don't want to stop.
Well, you can always print more, right? It's just paper, right?
A big problem, though, and I guess we can sort of steer the conversation here to sort of the future of the conservative movement, which I am proudly not a part of. But you have to say, though, the experiment of big government conservatism has failed drastically. Failed much more than big government liberalism would have failed in the same place.
Well,
yeah, go ahead, Tabitha.
No, my problem with that is that, I don't think any true conservative is going to look at George Bush and see that what he did was a conservative fiscal. Nothing he did was conservative fiscally. He was a social conservative and a very fiscal liberal. Failed. It wasn't because of his fiscally conservative policies that we failed.
Oh, right.
There's nothing conservative about his spending.
Right. Like today we saw him hailing the anniversary of No Child Left Behind, which was Ted Kennedy's legislation originally. Right. Which has basically tied the hands of all the states from having any control over their educational programs. And a lot of people are saying, look, this is going to be the first time with Obama that we've seen such government, oversight and interest in the economy since LBJ's Great Society. I'm sorry, but Bush grew involvement in the economy more than LBJ's Great Society. And plus, it was Bush who was really wanting more regulation, as Carl Rove wrote a piece in the Wall Street Journal the other day of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. My problem is, look, the government screwed us over here on both sides. Republicans allowed too much leverage on Wall Street. Democrats let the housing crisis go, and we lost our main source of physical capital investment, which is going to be real estate. And the problem is, this is a repeat. And now what? Government messed it up by getting involved, and now government wants to solve it. by getting involved. It's like having a hangover and waking up the next morning and pounding Jägermeister to fix it. It's not going to work.
Absolutely. That's a really, really good analogy.